In the early years of World War II, few weapons symbolized German battlefield dominance more than the Tiger tank. When it first appeared in 1942, its thick armor, long-range accuracy, and deadly 88mm gun stunned Allied crews. Many Allied soldiers described the first encounter with a Tiger as a moment of disbelief, because nothing they had seen before looked that large, that powerful, or that confident rolling across a battlefield. And for a short time, the Tiger became something close to a legend, an armored beast that seemed impossible to stop. But while German commanders celebrated each new Tiger as a masterpiece of engineering, American planners looked at it through a very different lens. Where Germany invested time, manpower, and scarce resources into producing a few hundred elite tanks, the United States followed an opposite philosophy: speed, quantity, reliability, and overwhelming force. And that difference in industrial thinking would eventually decide the war. At the center of this contrast was a single number. Germany built just 1,347 Tiger tanks during the entire war. America, within the same conflict, built 49,234 Sherman tanks, an unbelievable level of mass production that no Axis nation could even imagine matching. And those numbers didn't just reflect tank production, they reflected two entirely different visions of how to fight a global war. To understand why this contrast mattered, and why German veterans would later say the war was unwinnable once American industry fully awakened, we need to step back to the late 1930s. Before the war even began, Germany focused heavily on engineering perfection. Tanks were designed with precision, incredibly detailed internal layouts, and thick armor that often required specialized machinery and lengthy hand assembly. A Tiger wasn't just built, it was crafted. And that craftsmanship came with a cost: time. Too much time. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States approached war production with the mindset of a nation that already mastered mass manufacturing. American car companies could produce thousands of vehicles a day. Assembly lines were standardized, workers were trained by the millions, and factories already had the machinery to shift from making cars to making tanks almost overnight. When the war began, American industry didn't need to be reinvented. It only needed to be redirected. But the true shock came after 1942, when the German Tiger first entered the battlefield in Tunisia. American and British crews quickly realized that their early tank models, like the Sherman, struggled against the Tiger's long-range gun and nearly impenetrable frontal armor. It was common for Tiger shells to destroy an Allied tank in a single hit. And in those early encounters, even experienced Sherman crews found themselves surprised at how easily the Tiger could dominate open terrain. German officers believed they had created an unbeatable weapon, and in one-on-one battles, they often had. But war is not a duel. It is an industrial contest, and while Germany built a tank designed to be superior, the United States built a tank designed to be present. Everywhere, all the time, in overwhelming numbers. The Tiger took up to 300,000 man-hours to manufacture. A Sherman took a fraction of that. A Tiger required special steel, highly trained mechanics, and machinery that was constantly in short supply. A Sherman could be built on an automobile assembly line by workers who had been producing cars the year before. And while a Tiger could take weeks to repair, a Sherman could be patched together in hours, if not replaced entirely. During 1943 and 1944, as the war expanded, Allied commanders quickly realized that the solution to the Tiger wasn't building a single tank that could match it. The solution was to overwhelm it. Shermans arrived on the battlefield 5, 10, or even 15 at a time. Even if a Tiger destroyed several, it could not fight forever. It couldn't be in two places at once. It couldn't hold back the weight of an entire continent's industrial power. But the numbers alone didn't tell the full story. German industry never fully recovered from shortages of fuel, steel, rubber, and replacement parts. Even when a Tiger survived battle, it often broke down after only a few miles. Its engine strained under the weight, its transmission overheated, and its tracks frequently snapped under harsh conditions. Veteran Tiger crews later admitted that for every hour spent fighting, Tigers required multiple hours of maintenance. In some cases, more Tigers were destroyed by mechanical failures than by enemy fire. Meanwhile, American Shermans ran on reliable engines, easily replaced parts and fuel supplies that seemed limitless compared to German shortages. Allied mechanics kept Shermans running around the clock, and American logistics teams delivered spare parts faster than Germany could produce them. By 1944, the contrast grew impossible to ignore. For every Tiger that rolled off a German assembly line, 40 Shermans rolled off an American one. And when the Allies launched the invasion of Normandy, German crews peered through their sights and realized the truth. No matter how skilled they were, no matter how deadly their tank might be, they were facing an enemy that could replace every loss instantly. Accounts from German soldiers reveal a common theme: the exhaustion of fighting a war where their best equipment was rare, fragile, and difficult to maintain. A Tiger crew might destroy several Shermans in a single engagement, but they knew deep down that reinforcements were already on their way, while Germany had none to send. One German tanker later said, "For every Tiger we lost, it felt like losing a king. For every Sherman they lost, it felt like they simply ordered another." This contrast wasn't just deadly, it was demoralizing. German commanders began to realize that they were fighting not just the Allied armies, but the American economy itself, and that was a battle they could not win. And behind this industrial momentum was a decisive shift in American manufacturing philosophy. Automobile factories like Ford's massive Willow Run plant adapted their assembly lines to tank production with breathtaking speed. What Germany considered a miracle of engineering, America considered an assembly challenge. And America solved assembly challenges with scale, unprecedented, unstoppable scale. By 1944, as hundreds of Shermans rolled through Europe, the German High Command began facing a terrifying reality. Their tanks might win the technical comparison, but wars are not won on engineering diagrams. They are won by the side that can keep fighting the longest, the hardest, and with the greatest ability to replace what is lost. And this is where the story of the Tiger and Sherman becomes more than just a comparison of armor thickness and gun caliber. It becomes the story of a larger truth about the war, that American industrial strength, powered by millions of workers and thousands of factories, would ultimately drown German innovation under a tide of relentless production. Germany had the Tiger. America had the ability to build one Sherman after another, without pause, without shortage, without fear of running out. And by the time German officers realized what that meant, it was already too late. As the war moved into its most brutal years, the contrast between German armor philosophy and American wartime production became impossible to ignore. German crews inside their towering Tiger tanks were confident in their machines' destructive power, but increasingly uncertain about the world outside their steel walls. They could win duels, yes, but could they win an industrial war against a nation that seemed capable of forging tanks faster than Germany could replace the ones it lost? On the Eastern Front, Tiger battalions were already stretched thin, forced to cover massive sectors of broken, frozen ground. Crews sometimes drove for hours, simply to reach a fight, burning precious fuel that Germany could barely afford to supply. Even when the Tigers reached the battlefield, they were almost always outnumbered, sometimes one Tiger against a dozen Soviet T-34s. The Tiger could kill quickly, but ammunition did not last forever. Engines overheated, gearboxes failed, and eventually sheer quantity began melting away the German advantage. Meanwhile, American production lines, thousands of miles away, were growing louder, faster, and more organized than ever before. The factories were not merely building tanks, they were building an unstoppable tempo. Every shift change, every welding torch, every steel press, every rail yard shipment brought the Shermans closer to the front in overwhelming numbers. American workers would finish lunch, put their gloves back on, and continue building the machines that would change the direction of the war. German intelligence officers were stunned. Reports showed that American factories were building aircraft engines, artillery, trucks, ships, and tanks all at once, and at a scale previously thought impossible. By 1944, it was becoming clear that the Tiger's biggest enemy was not the Sherman itself, but the nation that created the Sherman in waves so large that even German high command stopped trying to keep accurate count. On the front lines in Normandy, German tank crews who had survived Russia and North Africa suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy that never seemed to run out of tanks. They would destroy 5, 10, even 15 Shermans in a single day. But by evening, new ones appeared again, rolling off landing craft, engines roaring, dust rising around their tracks. German commanders radioed Berlin, describing engagements that felt less like battles and more like trying to hold back an ocean with their bare hands. Heinz Guderian, one of Germany's most brilliant armored warfare theorists, privately admitted that without a miracle, the sheer weight of Allied production would grind the Wehrmacht into exhaustion. For every Tiger Germany built, America could send dozens of Shermans, each with trained crews and endless fuel stocks. A Tiger lost was a tragedy. A Sherman lost was a line item in a spreadsheet. In the villages of France, the reality became even clearer. American columns stretched for miles, fuel trucks, recovery vehicles, mechanics, ammunition carriers, field kitchens, and of course the Shermans themselves. German troops watched from hedgerows as convoys passed that seemed to have no beginning and no end. They had never seen this level of logistical mastery before. Some German officers even noted that American tank crews behaved differently. They were relaxed, joking, confident, often playing baseball or listening to music during breaks. They knew reinforcements were always coming. They knew spare parts were plentiful. They knew their army's strength did not depend on a single elite machine. It depended on a constant river of production that never slowed. By contrast, Tiger crews treated their tanks almost like living creatures. They polished the barrel, tuned the engine themselves, memorized every sound the gearbox made, and slept against the hull at night for warmth. Losing a Tiger felt like losing a comrade. But the war did not respect sentiment. Even the best tank crews could not fight forever with dwindling resources and factories under constant bombardment. As the Allies pushed further inland after D-Day, the skies darkened with the silhouettes of American bombers. Germany's industrial heartland burned under waves of attacks, and the factories that built the Tiger slowed, then stopped, then vanished under collapsing roofs and firestorms. Replacement tanks became fewer. Spare parts became rare. Fuel became almost mythical. And yet the Shermans, painted olive drab, marked with white stars, kept arriving in endless columns. In the Ardennes, during the Battle of the Bulge, German tank commanders attempted one final gamble. They pushed through the snow-covered forests, hoping to fracture the Allied lines. Tigers rumbled forward, their massive 88mm guns seeking fresh prey. But once again, the American response was not limited to firepower. It was logistics. Fuel convoys rerouted, fresh brigades arrived, new Shermans rolled off ships in Antwerp. The German offensive starved, while American supply lines fattened. Veteran German crews later admitted that they could not believe how fast replacement Shermans appeared after every engagement. Destroyed one day, replaced the next. Damaged in combat, repaired in hours. American engineers seemed to rebuild tanks as casually as changing tires. This speed broke the morale of many German tank battalions more than gunfire ever could. And then there was the psychological weight. Facing a Tiger was terrifying for any Allied crew. But for the Germans, facing 5, 10, or 20 Shermans became a nightmare of its own. The Tiger's armor was thick, but it could only point its gun in one direction at a time. German commanders were forced to withdraw again and again, unable to withstand the encirclement tactics of Allied forces who simply had more vehicles than any one Tiger could ever hope to destroy. As the front collapsed in 1945, abandoned Tigers appeared in forests, villages, and muddy fields, out of fuel, out of parts, or simply left behind because retreating crews knew they would never find enough petrol to run them again. Some were demolished by their own crews to prevent capture. Others were taken by American engineers who inspected them with curiosity and respect, acknowledging the Tiger's engineering brilliance, but also recognizing its fatal flaw. It had been built for a war Germany could not sustain. American soldiers were sometimes shocked when they climbed inside a captured Tiger. It felt like entering an armored cathedral. Thick walls, huge cannon, reinforced steel everywhere. But they also noticed the cramped interior, the difficulty of maintenance, the delicate systems that broke easily in harsh conditions. And they understood immediately why mass production beat perfection. When the war finally ended, numbers told the story better than any speech. Germany had produced 1,347 Tiger tanks in total. America had produced 49,234 Shermans. Even if a Tiger destroyed 10 Shermans, and many did, there were still more coming. The math wrote the ending long before the guns fell silent. After the war, historians, generals, and even surviving German tank officers admitted what had become obvious. The war was not lost in tank duels. It was lost in factories. It was lost on assembly lines. It was lost the moment America proved it could outbuild every Axis nation combined. The Tiger tank would be remembered as a legend, an icon of armored warfare, feared and respected. But the Sherman, built by the tens of thousands, became the machine that truly shaped the outcome of the conflict. The war had always been more than a contest of armor, thickness, or gun caliber. It was a contest of nations, of industry, of supply chains, of engineers and welders and machinists who worked night after night to ensure that the front line never ran dry. In the end, the story of the Tiger and the Sherman is the story of a simple truth. Germany built a masterpiece. America built an army.